Thanks everyone for joining us. Yes, Nadesh and my conversation today is really about customer centricity and how you apply that in the world of architecture. I'll touch off with a little bit about us and then work through what customer centricity actually is and have a bit of a look about what are some of the key habits organisationally that are applied for a customer-centric viewpoint. We'll then shift into a bit of more technical, discussion around the architectural ecosystems required to deliver on the customer journey. And we'll have a couple of polls along the way. So very quickly, I'll look at us as we're consultants and practitioners in the area of digital business enablement. We work straight across from end to end, working in the strategy and architecture space. And then from an implementation perspective, typically we focus on the areas of integration, process automation, and end-to-end application development. A really critical part of our approach, particularly at the strategy level, is that we apply a technology independent lens. So we want to make sure that what we're architecting, what we're solutioning is right for the business and what those end needs are. We work across a range of different industries, and I guess what's important to reflect on in our multiple engagements with these types of clients, we haven't always been focused on the customer. There's many sort of traditional work that we undertake, but more and more, each one of these industry verticals are focusing on the customer like never before. So whether it is student, patient, passenger, client, citizen, or tenant, all of these clients are very heavily being disrupted within their industry and by external factors, and they're having to look to how their relationship with their customer is functioning in order to deliver on the strategy for their business. So what is customer centricity? So we talk about customer centricity as the ability of an organisation to understand the unique problems and expectations of their target customers and then do something about it. Understand the context of the needs, consistently sort of craft and deliver products and services in order to meet those expectations. That's a fairly standard definition. But what's really critical here is when you start to see the customer at the centre of what you do, you're starting to shift the perspective or the language from which you see what the solution looks like. So we look at things like target, sell, deliver, support as fairly typical product or producer-driven mindsets, when really customer centricity is about seeing things from their point of view. What are their needs? What research are they undertaking? What are the decision-making processes they're undertaking in order to get to their end state? Now, forgive the Field of Dreams reference here, and if you're not appreciating that reference, I'm older than I thought I was. But really the point of this slide is to think about the transition from a production-driven mindset to a consumer-driven mindset. We used to build things and expect that customers or employees, whatever, will dutifully come and use what we make. And that really is changing now to the point where you have to question, will they come? Will they know about it? Is it built in the right way for them? So knowing the answer to that question, will they come, is actually critical. Is actually a critical element in the world of customer centricity. Gartner's done a lot of work, a lot of research in the area of customer centricity, and they've identified a number of habits that such organisations work through. And I've sort of broken them up into a couple of key areas. The first area is certainly around the customer focus, of course, but it involves continuously listening to customers. Now, that's just not a voice of customer, that physical listening, but it's also listening to what their digital behaviour is like. And that's really critical when it comes to thinking about data. We need to think about customers' full life cycle. So what's the value delivered to them across the customer's lives, from when they first start engaging with your organisation to how their needs change as time goes on. And then an unusual word, empathy, is really interesting. And that's just really thinking about or having an understanding of what their needs are, and understanding that the processes that they engage in with you is only a subset of their complete experience of what they're needing to solve in their life. And then working to proactively do something about that. Obviously, giving feedback or receiving feedback is really critical, but doing something about it is even more important. And that really speaks to the value exchange that happens between customer and organisation. We've all provided customer feedback forms at some point of our lives, and often that's a one-way exchange. It's very important that we try and work to have that as a dialogue where possible. And we know that employees are very much a critical part in the delivery of service and the delivery of experience to the customer. So keeping them engaged and motivated is really important. Customers know that we're in a digital world and privacy is critical for them, so we need to get that right. And then, of course, building a sense of purpose, embedding it. And that really speaks to some of the long-running cultural elements of an organisation. Some of those terms may seem quite new to some of us in terms of how we experience and how we live it. But really, oftentimes, it just gets brought back to really core and consistent activities that we have to or we have responsibility for in addressing. So those customer things really speak to data management, data accessibility, not only by the customer themselves, but also across multiple stakeholders and silos within an organisation, and then putting the smarts over the top of that data to provide the insights and the analytics that are required. We're all familiar with business rules and streamlined processes, really critical to drive efficiency and keeping employees, happy in the work they do, with being able to transition into higher value tasks. Security, this is not a security forum, but certainly that goes without saying that you need to get security right. And of course, the cultural and governance that is overlaid on top of that. In a lot of the work we do, obviously we're dealing with our customers, and we see a big focus, and a part of our focus is on understanding what the business challenges are. So the type of language that businesses or clients talk to us about can often be more internal focus. So key statements like wanting to respond to the market and deliver new initiatives quickly. Needs like wanting to launch an app, needs like wanting to break down silos within their organisations to get faster delivery, needs like wanting their systems to share information as it comes to hand. So our focus, working with our customers, obviously, is to translate that into challenges. Now, I won't go into the detail of this, but I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of these things. What's the challenge in launching apps? How do I make this done faster? How do I break down those silos? So those challenges are really often quite common to us. What we're seeing a lot more of, and what's important, is to understand what the customer challenges are too. Not necessarily from the consumer or the customer themselves, but at least from the boundaries edge of our organisation and how it interrelates with those customers. So we're wanting to have an ongoing dialogue with our customers. What does that look like? We're wanting to leverage the customer data in a more sophisticated way. We're wanting to find out more about people who interact with our systems who we don't necessarily know yet, which I think is an interesting challenge for many organisations. And then do something about it, make offers for customers with the different products and services that we offer. So we express those challenges in different ways. So often it might be a single conversation. How do you expand a single conversation with a client into something bigger? How do you get a better customer profile, and so forth? I might skip to the first poll, and you can see here just a very quick one. What is your organisation's main customer-centric challenge? So you can see there a range of different challenges. Some of those were listed in the previous slides, some a little bit different. You might resonate with one of those or two of those or many, or nowhere at all. I'd be really interested in your thoughts on those. We might have a quick look and see if that's tracking at all yet. No votes coming in. Is that right, Isaac?
I'd suggest going back to the poll question and just sitting on that for a while. It won't come up until you've let people have some time to actually vote on it. So yeah, maybe just stay there for a bit and then we'll have a look in a second.
Very good, thank you. So lots of different challenges here, and the really critical thing is in many times all will exist, and a big challenge for organisations and architects when thinking about roadmap is to start to prioritise what those look like, and we can spend a bit of time, or Nadesh will spend a bit of time shortly. So there we go, we've got a few coming in now. So all of the above, that's a fairly common theme, and having a consistent conversation. That's fairly typical of the type of feedback that we're getting and wanting to improve those conversations. So thanks for your participation on that one. So we'll move now into, I guess, a bit more of the architectural phase of our presentation, and talking about how you're applying enterprise discipline to the marketing phase of the customer journey. I won't dwell on this for too long. You may be familiar with the customer journey. Oftentimes it starts with the customer just having an awareness that they have a need, then going through a consideration phase, which is well prior to any form of acquisition phase. We're working very heavily. I think we're very familiar with how to service a customer and the strong processes involved there. And then to some extent, loyalty. This is represented linearly, but clearly there are a lot of cycle loops involved in this journey. What we're going to focus now on Nadesh, I'll pass to Nadesh, is the marketing phase leading up to acquisition, because that's where a lot of new activity is happening. Over to you, Nadesh.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, good morning, everyone. What I wanted to focus on, because there are many different types of customer journeys that exist in an environment. If it is a product focus or retail organization, this journey definitely resonates with a lot of people. But we think about whether the governments or organization, those who are more service focused, they will have a different path of the journey. Not necessarily, they're not selling something, but they're delivering services. But a lot of components that what I'm going to talk about, the customer interaction point of view, they still are applied to them. So customer journeys, it's a very broad topic. And today's session, we have focused more on the buying and selling type of journey, but similar types of customer journeys are definitely applicable for the service-focused organizations such as state and federal governments as well. Okay. Simon, you can see my screen?
Yeah, so it's on the poll.
Yep. That's okay. So we've got the next poll. We've got the next poll. What's going to help us to describe some of our discussion in detail. So the next, what has been your organization's experience with customer journey to date? You are in your environments currently, and what resonates most with you? We just give you another 10 seconds to answer that question as well. Okay, very good. So so that's good to see the green box. I think that's we have used customer journeys with mixed success, but the idea is that yes, you have used it and different in what level it gets applied into within organization and when you're solutioning the customer-centric solution. That's really key thing, because we don't talk about customer journeys and other customer journey, identifying the solution needs from customer focus point of view. The customer journeys is the main tool that's applied. It's very different to the traditional use case mapping and other approaches we used to use to develop software or implement software. I also see that the blue one, that we have a strong alignment with our applied technologies to our customer journey. That's good to see. This is not the new notion. It's been in the industry for few years as well. Okay, now taking an example, or where buying and uh, buying and selling cycle. What I wanted to talk about, like what I have learned in last 3-4 years as an architect in different roles in customer focus scenarios. One of the things that I wanted to touch on, how do you identify the needs for solution? Before you can solution, you need to understand how do you identify the requirements, or then how do you identify the technology versus business requirement. Customer journey is a tool, but there are certain nuances that I've learned along the way. One is around when we talk about the customer journey, there are always two different types of terms used. One, the way customer sees or customer is thinking, and the other one is how our internal teams such as marketing and sales and service team, the terminology they use is quite different the way customer use it. I was reading an article the other day, and one of the interesting fact about that was, regardless of how much technology or the digital channels or everything has changed around customer, but their social behavior around buying and selling something, they have identifying their needs and buying hasn't changed. So what I meant by that, needs are always driven by some sort of customer's life moment, situational needs. But from that is always a continuous thing. If for one customer, someone needs something today, they might not need the same thing for another few years, but then there will be another customer. So you have different persona or different customers to deal with. But from organization point of view, you have to continue selling your brand and making interest in your brand and products. That's a continuous loop. So that's how in that phase of needs and awareness, how those two words come together. Now, moving on to the next phase, some of the terminologies part. When customer is thinking to buy something, they don't just go and buy. There are typical behavior. It was same 10 years ago when people used to use newspaper to search something. It's still the same in the digital world. That's the social behavior around being able to search and compare the products, and then being able to also find some sort of in social proof as well, that what they are buying is actually what they're how it compares with the other products. And the organization that's selling, the company that's selling, also has the reputation around to goods, products, and the services as well. Now, moving that into the internal perspective, how when connecting those dots, when someone is searching something, how a company's brand or products come into the digital interaction or digital feeds that customer is seeing on day to day. For example, search engine, so whenever you launch a product and you want that to campaign out for next few months, it's about search engine optimization, social media ads, and so on. So what I'm trying to show here, that is on the external side, there's a way of seeing, like searching or comparing. But from internal point of view, being able to use the technology capabilities, which actually connects your brand or product at the point that customer is looking, that's when you apply those technology thinkings and the customer needs behavior. And it is the continuous thing. It never stops, because one customer will, the second customer and third customer, from organization internal point of view, technologies such as search engine optimization, social ads, the online website presence, how the customer comes to your channels. Customer also, along the buying cycle, they might need some more help, and that customer need, and from when you are an architect and you're trying to solution, we may need a chat bot, we may need a phone call, call center type of support, or we need another through the social posts or FAQs. So that need more info from the customer requirement point of view can be solutioned through different ways, depending on what technology capabilities and what's your product roadmap in those customer-centric solutions are. Now, we hear this lot about orchestrated journeys and customer journeys. And this orchestration of journeys there's a huge notion around in the marketing phase, acquisition phase, and post-acquisition phase as well. Today, I'm going to focus on in this orchestrated journey in the acquisition phase on marketing. Tools such as digital marketing platform, they allow to capture the customer's interactions from the time of being them visited the website, for them then interacting through the SMS or EDMs, and to the connecting them to the buying cycle as well. So this is how the two worlds comes together. Further, moving on, you will see the continuous pattern here, the customer perspective and the internal perspective. So as an architect or the solution designer, you really got to have a thinking of bridging those two gaps, because you would be, when you're doing a solutioning, you have to flip-flop your thinking. Oh, I'm talking whether the customer language or my marketing team or sales language. So that's kind of one of the lessons learned for me. Definitely bridge the gap from two different perspectives. Okay, so that's typically the pattern goes from again in the buying insight. Similar pattern, if you look the service focused organizations such as governments and so on, providing the digital services. You can provide the digital services, but if the customer can't find those digital services through the channels they live in, those services will not be, will not be exposable. So that model also exists, thinking from the customer, where customer is interacting and providing those digital services through those channels. Okay. Now, when it comes to the building the architecture for customer-centric solution, there are many different types of products, which from the CRM to digital marketing platform to other tools that are available in the market. They all perform the role of making the ecosystem. Customer-centric solutions are not really one product. They are definitely combination of many, many different technologies that you will use to build the architecture. One thing I wanted to, I think this diagram is a very busy diagram. We have an attachment available as part of as part of this event. You can download it. It's also available from our website to download as well if you want to get in touch with us. Okay, so what I wanted to focus on is one of the channels part, because digital touch point, when we talk about customer centric, the digital touch points are the key things. Now, digital touch points, when we are planning to solution, where customers' current digital touch points are like that, some of them we don't own at all, but we have to consume the data, we have to work from them. So for example, your search engines and social advertising platform, digital advertising, and even to your SMS or email marketing platform that you use, some of them you don't, specifically around the social and the search engine. We don't, no company owns those platforms, but you use them, but customers are there. So you have to build solution, and you really need to understand how those digital channels interacts with your own channels, which is your websites, your service desk, your call centers, your other messaging channels. How do you connect customers' touch points to your own touch point? That is one of the key thing that you will find when you're building the customer focused solution. That's it. Moving on from there, in this diagram, when you download, you will see behind the walls of your internal organization, you will have the platforms such as your CRM system, your customer, in a university scenario, student management system, in a retail scenario, order fulfillment system, and your website. Behind your walls, there are many systems which holds the data, and you've got to have really focus on data integration platform and master data management capabilities and the continuous loop of the data. That all of those things makes those, when the customer touches in your internal walls, those systems are known. There is no rocket science from architecture point of view, but the creativity on customer centric solution comes. How do you plug in all these components together? That's where the key thing is. And we've got assets available, like say, how it is, again, this is not something, it's again, say IT solutions, how they come together, but to get the rapid acceleration around these thinking, you've got to use some assets that are available in the market, and we have got some of those as well. Okay, so that's how, what the key point I want to make, there's no one platform you can buy to build a customer-centric solution. It's a combination of everything. Now, moving on to, how are we going with the time? Almost there. So with the recommendation characteristic, I think I have touched a lot of those in these characteristics and how you solution them. But one thing is, which is first point, is not about technology. It's about how, as an architect, how you engage with your stakeholders. You know, marketing teams and sales teams, they're very creative people. They come up with very creative ideas. And sometimes from us, like as an architect, it's really hard to keep a pace with them. But that's kind of the understanding those, that's definitely helps me. And CX architecture is high. It is a very fluid and changeable environment. For example, a lot of digital interactions are driven by something which is not in organization's control as well, or company's control. For example, suddenly a new social media channel pops up in the market, and how you can leverage that to engage and build into your customer journey. It's always going to change. And so architecture point of view, if you conceive API driven architecture, your data segregation of data, good data principle, and building your data, separating your data layer versus engagement layer, those concepts of architecture are really useful, what we call Lego style architecture. And then also, rather than diving down to each item, one thing I wanted to focus on, real-time 24/7 use cases requirement, because customers are online everywhere. But from an architecture point of view, don't lose the sleep on that, oh, everything has to be running internally from the 24/7 point of view. Your customer interaction channels have different SLAs than the fulfillment system. And the data is key here, multi and ever-growing transactional data versus social data, being able to solution that. There are many types of data approaches. Data is customer-centric is a whole new topic, a whole separate topic to talk about. So that's probably where we finish from the technology. Again, as I said, it's a broad topic. Reach out to us if you want to talk to more in detail, but this is the where we want to start you provoking your thinking, how you different things comes together. Now, recommendations. Simon, you start with the top ones, and I will go in the technology one.
Yeah, just to wrap up, obviously a number of recommendations, and I think you picked up identifying your internal customers is actually a really critical part of this. So you have a role to find your customer, what their needs are, what their personas are, which is sort of a bit of a trait of how they engage, how they buy, what they're thinking about, and really critically adjust your language. So the language of the customer, your internal customers, is really important. Make sure you support customer experience ownership, and it's really critical to get that right. It may not rest with you, and that's okay. But working through, someone should have a singular accountability for CX ownership, because the experience sits across many parts of the business, and work with the different collaborative stakeholders who will have responsibility for delivering CX in different areas. And of course, facilitate prioritization. A lot of our work is involved on crafting roadmaps. The important one there is how to prioritize roadmaps. So, we all have skills in working through what weighted criteria assessments look like. We can work with that and use that overlay for the various customer experience priorities that organizations have. And Nadesh?
Yep, and the at the bottom, I think I've touched on a couple of those already. But one thing I wanted to touch on, uplift with data discipline. In the CX domain, the data, your stakeholders such as marketing team and the salespeople, imagine the finance processes and the finance, which are very much a data-driven data-driven processes. Let's take the example of month-end process. You got to start having appreciation of the customer-centric, your internal stakeholder. They have more demand of the data, and the more similar fashion, the way accounting or finance function in your organization will use the data every month. But for sales and marketing, it's even more shorter cycles to use that data, because to continuously reach out to new customers with the products and services, the data how it ends up from different channels, being able to use that is as I think I found that as enterprise architecture domain, we have a lot of appreciation for the technologies like HR, finance, ERPs, portals, and so on. But in the marketing domain, I think we need to start appreciating that what function they perform and the data they do, because that's the front-facing function in the organization. Now, flexible governance approach, that's another one I wanted to talk about. That is, because the way the data is being dealt is actually, security is definitely required, customer privacy, because that's what creates your trust in the brand. Having that, as an architect, being able to support your teams in a way, how the data is governed and how data is provided, that's also critical. And high level of experimentation, as I mentioned, that being able to run new campaigns, new ways to reach out the new market is actually it's not a written, like there are certain ways of doing it, but it's actually a high level of experimentation is required. Means how do you reach with the AI and machine learning? So that's kind of things is required in those domains. So have that appreciation for those architectural components. So that's probably concludes our presentation for today. We'll wait for questions.
I appreciate we've gone a little bit over time, but not sure if there's any particular questions that we have time for.
So we have run time. However, that being said, if there are any questions that do come through from the audience, Simon and Nadesh can answer them still just by typing in answers and sending them to you guys. So there's a couple questions in there that you guys can answer, but we probably have time for the one now before we move on to the next session. But the first question that's come through is, how do you explain to customers/business the benefits of data discipline?
Okay, so I will take that. That's a very good question. Always comes into a lot of discussions. The benefit, you need to translate the customer and business benefits in the way the customer sees the value. So, for example, if customer collecting the data is specifically, let's say in Fed government departments, it's about being able to provide the service to the customer where customer is complaining about certain service delivery aspects, being able to put customer on the front, that if by using data, we will be able to provide this service to customer. That's when the data discipline around the governance will start having. So it's hard. Data governance is a hard thing, data discipline. But if you start your requirements around customer being able to call the call center 3 times to get some response, that's a problem. And we need to have a data discipline around, such as master data management, because you want to know about the customer and the transaction. That's how you will be able to do that. You have to really relate with it's a hard discussion, but if you start talking from the customer language, there are definitely ways to get the persuasion in the internal stakeholders.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, guys. And as I mentioned before, to everybody, if you do have questions for either Simon or Nadesh or both of them, I'm sure you can ask them in the Q&A. However, I'm sure you can reach out to them after the event as well. Their information is on the screen now. Feel free to reach out to those guys, ask them any questions that you might have. I'm sure they have no issues with taking any questions from you all. So thank you so much, Nadesh and Simon, for that presentation and joining us today.